Melania Trump destroys TV host. Her response leaves America in shock. There are moments on television that transcend a simple interview. They become a battle of wits, a test of composure, a renowned host known for his razor-sharp questions, always pushing his guest to the edge. A woman underestimated by many, yet possessing a quiet strength that could silence an entire room when she walked onto the stage that night. No one expected this conversation to become one of the most unforgettable moments in television history. The questions grew sharper, the pressure mounted, yet she did not waver. And then with a single response, she stunned the world. The cameras captured it all the split second when the host for the first time was left speechless. Was said, turn the tide, stay with us until the end, because this is a story you won't soon forget. Tonight, The American Perspective airs as usual, one of the most popular talk shows in the country, where politicians, celebrities, and world leaders face the toughest questions. The host, Nathan Cross, is a household name, not just for his intellect and ability to expose vulnerabilities, but for his biting sarcasm. Sometimes ruthless, always calculated. His interviews often feel more like duels, and few ever leave victorious. The audience is buzzing with anticipation all day. Rumors swirled about a special guest, but no one knows for sure who it will be. A controversial politician, a Hollywood star embroiled in scandal. The stage lights blaze. Nathan steps out wearing his signature smirk. But tonight something is different. A subtle tension lingers in his posture, so faint that only the most observant would notice. He's interviewed some of the most powerful figures in the world, yet tonight something has him treading carefully. He leans back in his chair, twirling his pen between his fingers, deliberately stretching the silence, heightening the suspense, and then slowly he speaks. Tonight we have a guest that no one saw coming, someone not universally loved yet impossible to ignore, a woman who has remained silent for a long time, but tonight she has something to say. The studio falls into complete silence. All eyes turn toward the backstage entrance. The camera sweeps across the audience. Some furrow their brows in curiosity. Others widen their eyes in disbelief. And then the door opens. Melania Trump steps onto the stage. She's dressed in an elegant ivory white suit, poised, composed, radiating quiet confidence. Her posture is upright, her steps deliberate, as if she has been preparing for this moment for a long time. The audience is stunned. A few scattered claps break the silence, while others exchange hushed whispers. No one quite knows how to react. Nathan Cross, for all his preparation, seems momentarily caught off guard. He knew who was coming, of course, and yet seeing her walk onto his stage, it still takes him by surprise, only for a second. Then just as quickly he regains his composure, flashing a sly, knowing smirk. Welcome to the show, Mrs. Trump. I have to be honest, I didn't think you'd actually have the nerve to show up tonight. Melania pauses. She meets Nathan's gaze, unwavering. Slowly, she pulls out her chair and sits across from him, a faint, enigmatic smile on her lips. I'm not here because of nerve, Nathan. I'm here because I have something to say. As blankets the studio, for a few long seconds, the camera captures the sharp intensity in Nathan's eyes and the unwavering composure of Melania. Nathan leans back in his chair, a flicker of intrigue flashing across his face. The game has officially begun. The atmosphere tightens like a drawn bowstring. The entire audience holds its breath, eyes locked on the stage. Melania Trump sits across from Nathan across the stage lights, casting her features in sharp relief. Calm yet resolute, Nathan clasps his hands together, reclining slightly, deliberately stretching out the moment. This is more than an interview. This is a battle of wits, and he is always the one in control finally. He breaks the silence, his voice smooth, friendly on the surface, but laced with provocation. First of all, thank you for being here. Honestly, I was a bit surprised you agreed to come on tonight. I assume you've prepared thoroughly to handle me, haven't you? A ripple of laughter spreads through the audience. Nathan has barely begun, yet he's already setting the tone, turning this into a confrontation. Melania offers a small, knowing smile. She doesn't rush to respond. Instead, she studies Nathan for a brief moment, as if weighing whether his challenge is even worth acknowledging. Then tilting her head slightly, she speaks her voice. Steady, deliberate, I'm not here to handle anyone. I'm here to speak the truth. Nathan raises an eyebrow, intrigued. The audience murmurs, sensing the weight behind her simple yet pointed words. He smirks. He has seen seasoned politicians, CEOs, and Hollywood elites crumble under pressure. But Melania, she seems completely unfazed. Adjusting his posture, he crosses one leg over the other, keeping his tone light, though a trace of mockery lingers beneath. I have to admit, you're remarkably calm. Front of millions on live television, under the relentless pressure of a host determined to unearth something deeper. Melania doesn't respond right away. She gently rests her hands on her lap, her gaze locked on Nathan. A brief pause lingers in the shared air before she finally speaks. Her voice slow, deliberate, unwavering. What does it mean to be excellent? And what does it mean to speak? People often assume that only those who raise their voices, who argue the loudest, have influence. But I believe that sometimes it is the quietest actions that create the most profound change. The studio falls utterly still. A few audience members note others, exchange glances, absorbing the weight of her words. Nathan tilts his head slightly, pretending to mull it over. He flicks his pen between his fingers before countering. Actions over words sounds compelling. But don't you think there are moments when a person, especially a first lady, has a responsibility to speak out? Do you ever wonder if you should have said more? The question had just escalated. It was no longer just an observation, it was a direct challenge. Nathan was tightening the pressure, forcing Melania to confront what people had always said about her. This time, she didn't answer immediately. Her gaze remained steady, unwavering. She didn't clinch, didn't retreat. The entire studio seemed to hold its breath. Then finally she spoke. Her voice calm, deliberate. I would believe that a wise person does not say everything they think, but they always know when it is the right time to speak. A heavy silence followed. Nathan blinked, the audience murmured, and then slowly a few claps rang out, growing louder, spreading through the room. Nathan pressed his lips together, the corner of his mouth twitching into a smirk. This was not the response he had expected. He wanted hesitation. He wanted her to be defensive. Instead, she had turned his question into a lesson in wisdom. But Nathan was not one to back down. He knew he had to take this conversation further into deeper, more dangerous waters. And that is exactly what he intended to do. Nathan realized that if he couldn't shake Melania with his usual tactics, he would have to change the game. He would make it personal. He would go after her marriage. This was where the real tension would begin. The atmosphere in the studio shifted. What had started as a battle of wits was now transforming into something much more gripping. If the audience had any doubts before, they were now completely hooked, drawn into every word, every glance, every unspoken challenge between Nathan Cross and Melania Trump. Nathan knew he couldn't keep using the same approach. Melania wasn't the kind of person who could be cornered with sarcasm alone. She had already proven her resilience, her composure, and her sharp intellect in every response. But Nathan was not one to surrender easily. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping into a lower, more deliberate tone, as if he were about to lead the audience into an entirely different narrative. You've said that actions matter more than words. That sometimes silence is a way to create influence. But I have to ask you this, Melania. Have you ever considered that length could sometimes be seen as complicity? For a brief moment, the air in the studio seemed to freeze. A few audience members inhaled sharply. Camera zoomed in on Melania's face. Her expression remained calm, but to those paying close attention, there was the faintest glimmer of steel. In her gaze, she slowly placed her hands together. On her lap, unhurried, she knew this game well, and she knew that with people like Nathan, sometimes silence held more power than words. Finally, she spoke, her voice gentle yet firm. Silence and complicity are two very different things, Nathan sees. The moment cutting in before the weight of her words could fully settle. And yet many people don't see that distinction. When America went through moments of chaos, when there were controversial statements being made, people waited for you to speak up. And you didn't. Melania's gaze remained locked onto his, unwavering. She had no intention of looking away. Nathan, you are a host. You live by words, but I believe that true leaders are not defined by what they say, but by what they do. Nathan smirked. as if he had been waiting for this very answer. Then let's talk about what you've done since leaving the White House. You've remained largely out of the public eye. You've had projects, but they haven't made headlines, while others travel the country, giving speeches and making their voices heard. You've chosen to stay in the background. Is that because you don't want to be involved in controversy? Once again, the question was, a trapped Nathan was painting a picture of someone who had avoided responsibility, someone who watched from the sidelines while others fought the battles. Melania tilted her head slightly, her voice unchanged, steady as ever. Nathan, I don't think the real question is whether I've spoken or not. The real question is, why are people so focused on what I say instead of what I do? The audience murmured a few claps. Reach its most explosive moment. The attention in the studio was reaching its peak. Nathan Cross, a man who had interviewed hundreds of high-profile figures, knew he needed to take a bolder step. Questions about politics, social responsibility, and even Melania's philanthropic work had done little to shake her. She had held her ground, responded with precision, and if anything seemed to be winning over the audience. But Nathan was not the type to relinquish control of an interview so easily. He decided to shift tactics. If challenging her career and public role wasn't enough, he would go after something far more personal, a subject. Melania had always kept guarded from the public eye, leaning forward slightly. His voice slowed, sharpening like a blade. We've talked a lot about your choices, about your belief that actions speak louder than words. But now let's discuss something I know our audience is very curious about. Your marriage. A hush fell over the studio. A few members of the audience shifted in their seats as if they had anticipated exactly where Nathan was going. Melania, your marriage to former President Donald Trump has been one of the most scrutinized relationships in American history. Some believe it was a political arrangement rather than a real marriage. Others say you were merely a supporting character in his story. What do you say to that? This was not just provocation, it was a direct strike. Nathan knew full well that for years speculating had surrounded Melania's relationship with her husband. Many had claimed she stayed with him for power, that their marriage was nothing more than a transaction. The stage lights cast a glow over Melania's face, but she remained still unshaken. If any emotion flickered in her eyes, it was no embarrassment or anger, but something else, a deep, quiet understanding of the kind of man sitting across from her. She remained silent for a few seconds, just long enough to make the entire room hold its breath, and in a voice low, but weighted with meaning, she spoke. Nathan, I've heard many rumors over the years, but I've never let others decide my story for me. Nathan raised an eyebrow, but Melania didn't give him the chance to interrupt. People love to create a narrative about the woman standing next to a powerful man. If I step back, they say I'm overshadowed. If I step forward, they say I'm trying to take the spotlight. There's no right choice in their eyes. A murmur spread through the audience. Some nodded in agreement, a few even clapped. Softly, Nathan, momentarily taken aback by her directness, quickly recovered and pushed further. So you're saying you don't care what the public thinks? Melania tilted her head slightly, her voice unwavering. I'm saying I don't lie to satisfy expectations. Built on assumptions this time, the applause was louder, but Nathan wasn't done yet. He needed more. Leaning back into his chair, he twirled his pen between his fingers as if carefully considering his next move. But Melania, you can't deny that there have been countless moments when people have wondered, are you truly happy? This time, the question was no longer just provocation. It cut straight to something personal, something Melania really spoke about. The camera zoomed in, searching for even the slightest flicker of emotion. Melania met Nathan's gaze, head, or no hesitation, no retreat. Happiness is not something measured by rumors. Only those who truly live their lives understand its worth. Short, powerful. The audience reacted. Immediately some clapped. Others sat in quiet contemplation. Nathan narrowed his eyes slightly, realizing that Melania wasn't just sidestepping his traps. She was using them to reaffirm her own narrative. So he went for his final strike. You can say that, but if this truly is a happy marriage, then why in so many moments have you chosen silence instead of speaking out in defense of your husband? The entire room fell silent. Once again, Melania didn't flinch. Her expression remained calm, but this time there was an unmistakable sharpness in her voice. Nathan, perhaps this is something you don't understand, so let me make it clear. I do not need to speak to prove my love or my loyalty for real. Relationship is not defined by what is said on television. It is built on what is understood when no one else is watching. The applause this time was louder, stronger, it lasted longer. Some in the audience even rose to their feet. Nathan blinked just briefly before regaining his composure. He knew he had thrown everything at her. Every carefully calculated question designed to corner her. But Melania had not stepped back. She turned the most sensitive inquiries about her marriage into a statement of personal strength. This battle wasn't over yet, but it was clear the momentum had shifted in her favor. Nathan had exhausted all the tough questions about her marriage, and still Melania stood firm if he wanted to shake her. There was only one move left, one final question, a decisive blow that could change the entire course of the interview. What would it be? Would Melania finally be pushed into a vulnerable position, or Nathan? Anyone can say what if, but living in the past doesn't make you stronger. I don't waste time on regret. I chose my life and I'm proud of it. A round of applause rippled through the audience. At first scattered, then it grew louder, fuller. They had just witnessed a defining moment. Nathan hesitated just for a fraction of a second. This was the moment. He realized he would not break the woman sitting across from him, but he had one last question, one that wasn't just for Melania, but for everyone watching. Do you think America has misunderstood you this time? Melania didn't answer right away. She held Nathan's gaze as if she were looking past him, through every assumption, every criticism she had endured over the years. Then slowly, deliberately, she spoke, each word weighted with certainty. I think America still has a lot to learn about listening so simple. Yet it sent a shockwave through the room. This time, it wasn't just scattered applause. The entire studio erupted. Nearly the entire audience rose to their feet. Some cheered, others shouted in admiration. Even those who had once doubted her couldn't deny it. She had just turned this entire interview into a lesson on resilience, conviction, and self-respect. Nathan couldn't hide the flicker of astonishment in his eyes. He knew he had lost, but not in the usual way he had lost, because he could not break this woman. She did not evade, she did not forget, and most importantly, she refused to let anyone else define her story but herself. The interview had reached its emotional peak, but this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The real storm would begin once this clip spread across America. The story did not end. On that stage, in the hours that followed, the public reaction, the media frenzy over Nathan himself would become part of a national conversation. Would Melania be criticized, or would she become a symbol of unshakable resolve? The interview had concluded, but its impact was only beginning after Melania's final words. The studio nearly exploded with energy. The applause was no longer hesitant or fragmented. It was thunderous. The audience stood clapping, relentless, as if they had just witnessed something rare, an interview where the guest had not just defended herself, but had forced the interviewer himself to reconsider his own approach. Nathan Cross leaned back in his chair, his gaze still locked on Melania. Throughout his career, he had challenged and unsettled countless high-profile figures, but he had never met anyone quite like her. She hadn't raised her voice, she hadn't lashed out yet somehow. She had stood her ground in a way that was both powerful and undeniable. He pressed his lips together as if weighing something in his mind, and then something no one expected happened. Nathan set his pen down on the table and gave a slight nod. I have to admit, this is one of the most memorable interviews I've ever conducted. For a brief moment, the entire studio fell silent. No one had anticipated that Nathan, known for his sharp, sometimes ruthless style, would say that Melania simply offered a small smile. She had not defeated Nathan. She didn't mean that she had simply been herself, and that alone had been enough to shift the entire conversation. Nathan continued, but this time his voice had lost its usual edge. There was something more genuine in it. You said America needs to learn how to listen better. Maybe tonight I've learned something too. A single clap echoed from the back of the studio, then another, and within seconds the entire audience erupted once more. Melania held Nathan's gaze, her tone still calm, but now carrying a subtle warmth. I didn't come here to change anyone's mind. Nathan, I came here to speak my own. Nathan gave a small nod before turning out to the camera. Agree or disagree, I think we can all admit night was a conversation to remember. Thank you, Melania Trump, for being here. Melania gave a small nod, then rose from her seat with quiet grace. She said nothing more. There was nothing more. That needed to be said. The show had ended, but the story was far from over as the stage lights dimmed and the cameras powered down. Crew members rushed toward Nathan's, eager to discuss what had just unfolded. Others lingered, still processing the confrontation they had just witnessed. Melania walked off the stage with the same composure she had carried when she entered, but before she could leave, a voice called out behind her. Melania, she turned. Nathan stood there, no longer the host trying to dominate an interview. Now he was just a man trying to understand the woman he'd just spoken to. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "I expected you to be more defensive or to avoid certain questions, but you didn't." Melania gave a small, all-knowing, "A smile, Nathan, did you think I came here because I was afraid?" Nathan let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "No, now I know you're not that kind of person." She said nothing more, just a slight nod, then she turned and walked away. In that moment, Nathan realized something he had once believed he understood everything about Melania. I rarely see it was an honest acknowledgement, and this time, the public respected him for it. The interview didn't just impact Nathan Cross, it changed the way people saw Melania Trump. Before, she had often been perceived as a quiet figure standing at the sidelines of politics, but after this conversation, many began to see her in a new light. I never really paid much attention to her before, but after this interview, I realized she's actually intelligent and far more in control than I thought. The YouTube commenter wrote, "Melania isn't a politician. She didn't come to debate, but she knew exactly what she was doing, and that's why she won on her own terms." A media analyst stated on a national news broadcast, "Of course the debate wasn't one-sided." Some critics argued that Melania still hadn't truly answered the toughest questions, but even those who disagreed with her couldn't deny one thing: she had controlled the conversation and walked away without ever losing her composure within just 24 hours. Hashtags like Melania Speaks and Melania versus Nathan were trending at the top of Twitter. Political analysts, journalists, celebrities, and everyday people all weighed in on the interview. Morning news shows dissected every moment, from the look in Melania's eyes when Nathan delivered his knockout question to the way she ended the interview with unwavering confidence. Many compared her poise to historical figures who had once been underestimated but proved their strength when placed under pressure. This isn't just about Melania Trump. This is about someone taking control of their own narrative, refusing to let anyone else define them. A media expert commented on MSNBC, "This was no longer just an interview, it had become a broader conversation about the power of silence, the way people are judged based on assumptions, and whether we ever truly listen to those we think we already understand." And as the noise began to settle, one question remained: do we truly understand others, or do we only see them through the lens of what we've been told? And with that, the audience was invited into the conversation. But before reaching the end, one thing had become undeniably clear. Melania Trump was no longer just a woman standing beside a powerful man. She was herself. And tonight, all of America had seen it. The interview had ended, but its impact echoed far beyond the studio walls. Within hours of airing, clips of Melania Trump and Nathan Cross's exchange flooded social media. Some praised Melania's composure and strength, calling her a symbol of resilience and self-respect. Others remained critical, arguing that she had skillfully dodged the hardest questions. But regardless of where they stood, none could deny one thing: she had made America listen. Even Nathan Cross, known for his sharp and relentless interviews, wasn't exempt from the debate. Some believed he had been outmaneuvered by his own guest, while others respected his willingness to acknowledge a conversation that had real value. This was more than just an interview. It was a reminder that in a world filled with noise and division, strength isn't always about who speaks the loudest, it's about who stands firm under pressure. And now the questions turn to you, the audience. What do you think about this interview? Do we truly understand the people we judge? And more importantly, do we have the patience to listen? Or do we only want to hear what confirms our own beliefs, whether you agree or disagree, no matter where you stand? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. If you found this story thought-provoking, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful conversation. Thank you for watching until the very end. Keep thinking, keep questioning, and most of all, keep listening. See you in the next video.